Dear brothers, I'll never forget a coffee outing to a Starbucks. I guess it was a Starbucks out in Philadelphia. I was probably a priest now for about 2 or 3 years working in Philadelphia. And there we have a ministry, of course, to Jefferson Hospital and for my young adult group, more importantly, to the Jefferson medical students. And this one very tall man, med student named Ken Remy, I'll remember his name, said, "Father Paul, can we go out for coffee?" And I said, "Sure." You know, it was kind of an unusual request. He'd never asked me out for coffee, but we went out for coffee, so we were having our coffee in Danish or whatever. And he said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Sure, Ken, go, of course." He says, "Father Paul, do you really believe in the resurrection of Jesus?" Of course, when he put it that way, I was like, okay, there's 3 reallys in that question. Let me think about it. Of course, I said yes. I said yes. But Ken's question has never left my mind. Because I think there is a sense in which we believe, and then there's some of us who really believe. And I think it's very true, brothers, that everything rests in our Christian faith on the great claim of Easter, the great praise of the risen Christ. This is what it's all about. And Ken was struggling with his faith. He was a doctor, soon to be a doctor, and he realized, I think he realized that the whole crux of the matter was this thing we now spend the next 50 days celebrating, that this man Jesus did the one thing that no other prophet, no other holy person was ever said to have done. He rose from the dead. And I guess I also think a lot about Benedict the 16th's rather stunning claim. He said once somewhere that the crisis, the only real crisis in the church is always the crisis of faith. The crisis of faith. And we could even fine-tune that to say it's the crisis of Easter faith, right? So if our faith rests on the claim that Jesus rose from the dead, we might say that when people are going through a crisis of faith, they're really going through a crisis of, do they really believe what we're going to spend the next 50 days saying we believe? Actually, we do it every day. Our faith is so based on the resurrection. And so, you know, you might even put it this way. You know, when say, a friar after 20 years or so leaves the order and just doesn't have the mojo anymore to do this life, let's say, it might be the case that they just stopped really believing that Jesus rose from the dead. I mean, it could be other things that were working in the loss of a vocation, but my experience now, 27 years in, I think often friars weaken because they have a crisis of Easter faith. So I want to suggest just a couple things to do then. One is constantly to be thinking it through. I mean, literally thinking it through. Like today, we have a counterclaim to what might have happened. I initially wrote a little homily some years ago, and I was going to use that. I'm going to wing it here. But I wrote a homily for a parish once where I said, I'm going to not do a CSI this morning, but I'm going to do an ESI, right? A CSI is a criminal scene investigation, where you go over all the facts of a crime or the facts of a situation. You look for the DNA, and you look for the blood drops, and you look for, witnesses, and then you determine what happened, and we're fascinated. I mean, CSI is still on today. How many years is that? Well, we brothers, we must do an ESI, an Easter scene investigation, right? What happened here? What happened here? Now, one thing we know is that the tomb was empty. Everybody agrees on that, huh? Everybody agrees on that. Even those that deny Jesus' resurrection can't deny the tomb was empty. In fact, if they could find a body, they would have shown the body, right? The Romans would have rushed to say, or the Jewish elders would have rushed to say, here's the body. What you're saying about the resurrection is not true, because here's the body. So we know from the facts that no one seemed to be able to find a body. And those opposing the disciples had a counterclaim. Tell them they came and stole the body. Well, maybe they actually did do that. Okay, let's imagine they did do that. So here's the claim, right? That these cowardly ragtag group of fishermen who were so absolutely petrified on the day of his crucifixion have now somehow out of nowhere come up with this courage and insanity to steal a dead body, to start to claim to the world that this person that they know is dead, right, because they got him stashed back here, this person is risen from the dead. And not only are they willing to make that claim publicly all over the place, but they're willing to get whipped for it and stoned for it and crucified for it, all for a proposed lie. Even Barney Fife, the old detective from Mayberry, North Carolina, would say, that just don't make no sense. So it seems to me that even on the face of it, we could say that the evidence is clearly on the side of the resurrection. And then I think, of course, of my C.S. Lewis, his great thought, he finally came to the conclusion that either Jesus is a lunatic or the greatest liar in all of history, or he is in fact the Lord. And I know we've gathered here this morning because we know in our minds that he's the Lord, that he did rise from the dead. And so Ken, Remy, wherever you are, we might send you this videotape. We here at this chapel this morning, tired after our day of celebration, we really, really, really believe Jesus rose from the dead. Amen? Amen.